I'm not going to lie. I'm getting really used to this setup of being on the couch.
We're back on the couch. Yeah.
Instead of being in a cramped closet.
It is much more comfortable. I feel like we can ramble on a lot longer because of it. So,
so we should always have a baby sleeping in our bed. Not in our bed, in our bedroom.
I can't wait to have our room back though.
I know.
Although I love having him there and it's beneficial, easy for breastfeeding.
Mm-hmm. Which is what we're going to talk about today.
Exactly. So.
Yeah, okay. Can we talk about, because we talk about breastfeeding, can we talk about what happened today and our 4-month-old biting you on the nipple?
It's been going on for a while now. Well, he hasn't been like really clamping down a lot, but he has been clamping down since he was born. So I have like a natural fast flow. So even sometimes, remember, like if you would come unlatched and then milk would come like squirting across the, I'm not even joking, like across the room.
It got me.
It like all the time.
Me and Liam.
Yeah. And if he unlatches like suddenly because it's coming out too fast, it goes all over his face. Mm-hmm. Like that's how bad it is. And it sprays. So,
and that little face is just like so confused.
Yeah,
like,
and covered with milk. So he's been doing that, but he's a baby, and so it doesn't really hurt. And so today, multiple times you saw him, he will clamp down and then turn his head
and pulling your nipple
and with it,
like you were pulling gum off, like stale gum off of a pole, and how it would stretch.
You looked at, you're like, ow.
It hurt.
I told him multiple times I would say ow sometimes, and you're like, whoa, he doesn't have any teeth. And then you witnessed firsthand what he does to me. And so he's been doing this, but now he's like really strong now. Like this baby's like a super baby.
He's super strong. Like
from his kicks, like everything. I'm not even exaggerating. That's how strong he is. So
it's verified by our pediatrician.
Yep. She was just like, oh, he is strong. Did not nail her accent at all. So yeah, he did that multiple times today. And I went to see, and I guess I had like sometimes if women breastfeeding, they know, like you'll have like pockets of milk that kind of like, that's where the
duct.
Yeah, like you get plugged ducts and stuff. Like sometimes it happens. I don't really get it bad, but like sometimes I feel like it's concentrated there, so I know to like massage it out. And so sometimes if the milk starts let out in those pockets, it sprays. And so I think that was what was happening to him, and I felt that when he was nursing. So before I nursed him the second time, I expressed some out myself. Like I didn't want to fully pump, so I like just massaged out those pockets so that he didn't do that to me again. But I looked at him and I said, you're really cute, but I'm gonna hurt you if you clamp down on my nipple like this, or we're going on a strike right now. Like, I don't know if we can do this any longer. But yeah, no, I had Liam who bit me with teeth. That was a different experience too. But then shortly after we stopped that journey, I was like, no more.
No more. But when I saw it, I cringed because it hurt. And I saw him with just the way he pulled you and turned his head. And I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, he always does that suddenly. He wants to come off. Usually he knows to unlatch when he pulls off because Liam's doing something funny that he can't miss out on. So he'll like, whip his head around. But today he was like, nope, your nipple's coming with me, whether you like it or not.
It looked like it hurt.
Yeah, it did. But it wasn't even as bad as
the teeth. Yeah. So you got teeth, kind of like the Ali Wong. You got teeth. You can ask for it. Nope.
Yeah, we're done with this journey. Bless all those women out there who've breastfed their babies well into the toddler years. Just not something for me because I can't. Nope, I just can't. These kids will bite you. Yeah. They will bite me. So I'm done. I'm hoping to make it, we'll talk about it more in the episode. Hopefully I can make it in the next, 6 months to a year.
Yeah.
And I'm good.
I'm Brian.
And I'm Fatima, and you're listening to Millennial and Pregnant. In this episode, we're discussing breastfeeding and my personal journey so far.
I really did not have enough lines in that open.
That was all me.
If you haven't heard about Anchor by Spotify, it's the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need in one place. In fact, this season of Millennial and Pregnant was produced and hosted on Anchor. Here's what I love about it. Anchor has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. This made it easier for me to edit my episodes on the go. When hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. And best of all, Anchor is totally free. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
So we are winding down this season with the last few episodes. We're going to talk about how it's going now 4.5 months in to a new baby and a 4-year-old. So today we're going to talk about your breastfeeding journey so far. And then in our next episode, we'll just kind of wrap everything up with just a lot of final thoughts.
Yeah. And TBD on if there'll be a season 3. Right now, I'll say no.
It has not been picked up yet.
It has, it's in review right now.
But, as we talk about breastfeeding, do you want to talk about your decision to breastfeed? Maybe, I don't know if it's in tandem with the first time, but having already gone through a year of breastfeeding, why you decided to continue with your second kid?
Yeah, I mean, continuing with the second one was because my first journey with Liam was, for the most part, really good. I talked about in the first episode having some struggles because he wanted to sleep and not practice latching while I had the consultant there. And then, me having to supplement with formula because he was just so distraught by the time he woke up the next day. And, I was new to it all. I was able to successfully latch him at first. So I had that initial feed, which was great. And we were like spoon feeding him while self-expressing before, but it was just not enough to hold him. So, I supplemented. So I knew, but once again, 99% of that journey, even with going to the lactation consultant and using the breast shield for a little bit period of time, my overall journey with breastfeeding him was really great. And there was a lot of ups to it more than there were downs. Just the convenience, the nourishment. Looking back at the photos that we have of Liam, I'm like, you were fat. You were like a little chunky baby. We didn't even realize that. And it was just amazing because he was 100% breastfed for, I don't even think he really took cereal until like 5 or 6 months. And even then he didn't have that much. Like, he was pretty much all breast milk in the first year of his life. So looking back at those photos, I'm like, wow, I did that. Like, I was able to nourish our baby and he got so big and it just worked out, and so I continued to do it, even going back to work. So I said, if everything is stacked in my favor again for this second time around, I'm going to give it a try. And so that's why I decided to do it again. And this journey was a little different. So, I don't know if we're going into that now, but
yeah, we can.
Okay. So, similar thing. It was actually really seamless latching Blair in the hospital. I didn't even need any help from any lactation nurse or consultant, like no one. I was able to latch him successfully, and I think he nursed for like an hour.
Oh my gosh.
Oh
yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah, and I switched up and he wanted more.
Yeah.
He just like kept until once I got moved from the labor and delivery floor up to the recovery floor. I forget what they call that floor. He continued to nurse just like every hour. It felt like maybe even more often than that. And so it felt fine. It felt natural. I was like, I got this. Like, this is going to be like so easy. And
like,
then
second time around, I got
the second
this.
time around, and all day and night, I was feeding him. I think he got in a couple hour stretches. So I was able to sleep just a little bit. And so I think it was like late morning. I'm like, whoa. He went to go latch and like it hurt a little bit, and then it kind of stopped, and it would hurt a little bit more. I'm like, what's going on here? And so I just felt like, I was like, maybe he's just been nursing like nonstop. So maybe, I'm just really sore. So he had gotten circumcised, and so he fell asleep for some time. Like once babies go through, they have like some type of painful thing that happened to them, they pretty much sleep for a good amount of time. So I had a lactation consultant that came by, or lactation nurse that came by my room, and I wanted to kind of show her what I was doing when I was nursing him, just so she can give me some pointers on why my nipples were hurting. She did say, self-express some milk onto it, and that's really good. And I had some nipple cream, like just nothing is really working. But I couldn't show her what we were doing. And that's really what's helpful when you have those nurses and consultants that come by to your room. It's good to show them how you're positioning your body and everything else, because they can tell you what you might be doing wrong and give you some pointers. And literally it could be them tilting your hand or their head ever so slightly, and it makes a huge difference, just real time. And so I wasn't able to do that because he was sleeping. So this was like, Liam when he first was born, where he just slept the entire time. So I hadn't really nursed that much throughout the day. And I think right before we were leaving, being discharged that night, he went to go nurse again. And oh my God, it was so painful, but still enough for me to be like, I just need to get through it. So he finished up pretty quickly, but I'm like, oh my God, that hurt so bad just now. So then fast forward, we get to the house, I come in and, introduce him to Liam, blah, blah, blah. I'm sitting on the couch and he wakes up and he's hungry. And so I go to latch him, and I was like, okay, this is pain that I've never felt before in my entire life. So I unlatch him with my finger, and there's blood in his mouth. And a piece of my nipple. A piece of my skin.
I don't remember. Oh, okay. I don't remember a piece of your nipple.
No,
also
yeah.
Being there.
I had to like take it out, because that's how it was so, the skin was so damaged or cracked and dry that a piece of my skin came off, and it was blood coming out. And I said, oh no, I can't do this. So I tried the other side, and that happened to be my right side. Painful, but still not as bad. But I still was like, I can't do this because I want the other nipple to get so bad. So I unlatched him, and we made the decision, like I made in the hospital with Liam, to supplement with formula, because I just couldn't do it. I was in so much pain, and I knew that if I continued this way, it was just going to get worse and worse. And I don't even think I could have sucked it up. Like there was no sucking it up, and that by then, especially when a piece of your skin is a piece of your nipple, like one of your most sensitive areas on your body, is off and it's bleeding. I don't know how people get their nipples pierced.
I'm pinching mine right now, and I'm like
there's just so much, nerve endings or whatever in that area. So, so now fast forward to day 2, nipples still hurt, but now my boobs are becoming engorged because my milk is actually starting to come in. I came in maybe a day or 2 faster than the first time around.
Definitely a couple days.
So when your breasts are engorged like that, obviously the skin, the nipple part, like everything is larger and stretched out. I could not fit into the tank that I have, the nursing tank that I have, the black one, that I thought I needed to return to get a medium, because I was like, well, what's happening? Like nothing is fitting. It's because my boobs were so big that in my normal bras, it was It was not working at all. Or shirts that I had gotten that I was like, this is going to be so great. I have like nursing clothes, and I couldn't even wear them because that's how much milk was coming in at first. So I was miserable. Needless to say, I was miserable. So I think the next day you went out to the store and probably got every single product you can possibly
shield, that kind of product that I could find. And shields and what else? There was like different variations of nipple shields.
You got a shield for me. You got something so that my nipples didn't touch my shirt, because I was in so much pain that I couldn't. Any clothes against it was going to prevent it from healing, and the clothes would get stuck to my nipple and then peel off a little of my skin. Guys, sorry if this is too graphic, but this is how bad it was. So, and then my milk started to come in, and I was trying to pump, but it was so painful. So you got the next size. You bought another size up. So that happens sometimes as just a pointer if like sometimes you have to change the size of your flank, I think it's called. And that's the part that goes over your nipple to pump, and if that's not right, that it can be very painful experience, cracked nipples or not. You have to have the right size. So you got a bigger size of that. You got cream, everything. And I think when I had to go outside for something, and the nipple things that you got so that my breast wouldn't touch my shirt was just so thank God it was
hard nipples.
Yeah, thank God it was winter, because I was able to put like a sports shirt over it, but it still was just
cones.
It was.
They weren't like flat or like little bumps. They were like cones.
So in my typical Virgo,
it was like you were going to like a friend, like being on the Friends show.
Or like I'm thinking of like the Madonna cone.
Oh yeah.
Like that's not like so pointy, but like that's how obvious it was that I had something under my shirt. So being the Virgo that I am, I had to come up with a plan. I'm miserable now, and I had to like get out of it.
This was like the first 4 days. Yeah. Within the first week of coming home.
I would say in the first like 24 hours.
Yeah, that's true. Yep.
So I go online, and I try to find the consultant that we had before.
Yeah.
She moved out to Jersey, and I was like, hell no, I'm not going all the way to Jersey.
Yeah. It's too especially
and with a newborn, I'm like, I need something that's like 10 minutes away, because that's how far she was from our first apartment. So then I find another place out, and I immediately booked the first appointment that was thunder.
I saw that huge flash of lightning in the middle of a severe thunderstorm right now, so you might hear some rumbles in the background.
So
luckily we're not plugged into anything.
I immediately booked the first appointment that I can find, and I think I came home a couple days away. I came home Saturday night. Sunday night is when I started doing my research of what I needed to do. And I think the first appointment was going to be Wednesday morning.
Yes.
Yep. So I was like, okay, I need to get through the next 2 days. So we decided we had a few more. We went through all the bottles that we had of the formula we got from the hospital, but that didn't matter. And I remember you being in the store and being like, should I pick up more formula? And I had said, no, we have the formula that we had someone shipped to us.
Yep.
And so we're like, we can use that instead. Long story short, thank God we didn't use it, because that was one of the formulas that were recalled.
Yep. That's specific lot.
Yeah. Was the one that was recalled. So anyways, that didn't matter, because that afternoon I'm like, I have milk coming out.
Yeah.
And so as painful as it was, you got the new sizes. It still was painful, but less painful. I pumped. So I was able to pump or self-express enough milk, because their little tummies are so small. So I didn't have to pump that much.
And even pumping was sensitive and difficult for you.
It was the worst. I would pump enough for maybe 1 or 2 feedings, and in the first few days, weeks, what is it, like 2 ounces or so that they drink. So I was pumping just enough for him to eat. And then you would feed him the bottle. And so we did that for the next few days because I needed to make sure. I was like, okay, with any wound, it's going to heal if I just don't touch it, right? So I was like, I just need to nurse this. So I was doing everything to make sure my clothes wasn't touching. I was putting the ointments on there. I was...
We're going to take a quick pause. Okay, so our son got woken up by the thunder.
Yeah.
So
it happens.
I think we're good. But we were talking about how you were protecting your nipples, not touching anything.
Well,
or not letting anything touch them.
I was doing just everything online, or I combined to heal as quickly as possible before our appointment on Wednesday, because at this point, I think I even tried the next morning or Monday or Tuesday morning. I tried again to latch Blair, and I think I started crying. I was like, this is too painful.
Yeah.
I just couldn't do it. I could not fight through it for whatever reason. So.
And you shouldn't have to.
Yeah, well, I hear some stories in some women, like they didn't get any help and they just, I don't know how. Eventually, I think maybe it healed and the baby got a little bit better, because like even as the baby matures, the journey kind of changes a little bit, and you don't have to worry. Like the positioning of the baby is so important when they're so small, because they don't have any control over anything. And so you're really trying to manipulate them and make sure that they're doing the right thing. And then as they mature, they kind of know what they're doing a little bit more. And so it makes it easier. So anyways, I was it seemed like the longest 3 or 4 days waiting for that appointment. I don't know. Maybe I had a lot of hope from my first time with Liam when we went to I went to a lactation consultant even then, and was more with Liam because he would nurse for like 5 minutes, like 2 or 3 minutes. I'm like, this kid can possibly be getting what he needs. And so we went to the consultant, and I was, latching him, but then I only felt a little bit more comfortable that he was actually getting anything if I had the nipple shield on. And so for anyone who doesn't know what this is like a piece of plastic that goes over silicone, whatever, that goes over your nipple, and it helps that the baby doesn't have to do a full latch. It's almost like a little bottle of some sorts for them.
It's like a nipple on top of a nipple.
Yeah. And so I had, for whatever reason, I felt like he was nursing better when I had that on. So, but that was such a production because 1, I had to clean it so frequently. 2, I would have to find it. When I needed to get it, and it was just.
And then it had to like stick on. It wasn't static.
No.
It just had to get a little wet.
Yes. So I'd use a little bit of my saliva to, because there was like flaps that went around the nipple, and you get it a little wet. It stays on it a little bit better. So it was just like, breastfeeding is supposed to be like super convenient, at least in the first few days of you breastfeeding. It's not supposed to be this huge production. So I went to the lactation consultant, and, she gave me the confidence enough to be like, you don't need this. She's like, you're doing everything right. She saw how I was positioned. The only thing she which is so hard for me just naturally, is just like, it's like shoulders down, relax and breathe. And you can't be all tense. She's like, you have to allow your milk to flow. And so that was the point, the tip that that stuck with me with her, was just making sure that I was breathing and being as relaxed as possible when I was feeding him. So now fast forward to the appointment that I had with our new person, which shout out, my first lactation consultant, which was a Black woman. And it was just nice to have that experience and have that person with me on that journey. And then, you know, I was a little afraid of what I was going to find now that we moved. And like I said, we've said before, we're in a predominantly white area now, right? So I was pleasantly surprised when I found this new lactation consultant. She was just, I think anyone who's in that field, and I was talking to my mother, I was like, you have to really like what you're doing.
Yeah.
And you really want to help people, because why are you there? Your job is to help people.
Like, it's hard to fake your help, I guess.
Yeah.
Because it's such a personal, like, I feel like, you know, doctor's bedside manner is just, it's okay if they're cold.
Yeah.
But the lactation consultant, it just feels more, you have to be more maybe highly sensitive, because they're coming to you.
There's no way you can do a good job if you're not.
Yeah.
If you don't have that, if you don't approach your job that way. And she was just, but I still was worried. But she was amazing. She was just so helpful. Just like literally hands on too. She's like, "It's okay," and she's like positioning my nipple into his mouth. Like she was just great. And then I think we had like maybe 4 or 5 sessions with her, and each tip or each session made me more confident going home. And then I was able to heal. Even in the first one, I was still kind of giving him the bottle because I still wanted to heal more, but I did attempt a couple times more.
You did.
And it wasn't as painful.
Yep.
And so I was like, okay, like it's getting there. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yep.
And, you know, I think then we found out that, she was watching him nurse, and she saw that, you know, I think I explained this before, when a baby goes to latch, they're not on you. People think they're just sucking your nipple. No, they're like, their latch is, what is it? The areola. Thank you. They're pretty much, that's where their latch is. It's on either end of those, and over the nipple. So not directly onto the nipple. And so she saw what Blair was doing. He latched perfectly. I was doing everything I was supposed to correctly. And then his mouth would ever so slowly just go backwards. And then he was on my nipple. And she's like, oh. And she would like unlatch him. And so we were trying to figure out, why is he doing that?
Yeah.
And turns out he had a tongue tie, like posterior tongue tie. So not as very common to see. You know, sometimes you notice it right away because the baby can't, it's right in the front of their tongue.
His was full tongue tie.
Exactly. And this was just in the back. So it was just making it, after nursing for a little bit, it was making it uncomfortable for him to keep his mouth open that long. And therefore he got a narrow, an incorrect latch towards the end of a feeding. So we went on the journey and made the decision to have, what is the procedure called?
I have no idea.
Anyways.
It was a laser
Yes.
that evaporated the cells of the tissue.
Yeah. Yep.
Evaporated the tissue cells.
Yes.
To release the tongue tie.
Or it was like evaporated the water because of tissue.
Yeah. Yep.
And it helped to break the tissue.
Yep.
And so.
And then the next 3 to 4 weeks, 4 to 6 times a day of stretches to kind of not reopen the wound, but
to make
to
sure it didn't. We didn't want it to heal back and it go back, so the tissue reconnecting, because she's like, it's gonna want to do that so frequently.
And I think we learned that for a posterior tongue tie, you don't realize a baby will have it unless they're breastfeeding, because they usually might be able to eat fine, and maybe you'll find it through bottle feeding as well, but for the most part, these are not really diagnosed unless you were breastfeeding or later on in life when you're having issues with speech or something else.
We saw with with bottle feeding him, there was 2 things that were happening. A lot of milk was dripping out, remember? And he was doing the clicking sound.
That's true.
And so it was almost, we had to do it because the nursing wasn't working, and then he was actually wasting a ton of milk and not getting a full feeding and getting tons of air because of the way he was sucking on a bottle. So really there was no choice that we had. So we did do it, and he was a champion.
Yeah.
They were like, he smiled or whatever right after. It's like, he's such a sweet baby. And I'm like, okay. Now, when I had given the honor of Brian to do all the lip stretches because I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Hearing his little cry. And then after a while, it like faded away after a few times of him doing it. She's like, think about you have a scab and you just keep scratching it. She's like, that's kind of what it would be. That's a feeling of what's happening. So she's like, that's going to be uncomfortable for him. And so he's going to want to nurse right after that. I always nursed him, and that helped to really, helped him. And so she was able to, diagnose that with him. And, we had the procedure right at the place there. And ever since, like, it's been great. Like, I think we're on the other side of it. And I think I stressed Brian out so much. I was like, I don't want to get this procedure done if only it's benefit for me breastfeeding, blah, blah, all this stuff. Because I didn't want it to be a selfish decision on my part. And, the doctors there and the lactation consultant was like, this is as much your journey as well, and like you want to make sure that you're less stressed because you're going to care for your baby more. And then now on the other side of thinking about it with a clear mind, I also remember how difficult it was with him with the bottle and just like just all the other things that could be a possibility if he didn't have the procedure done, because
and having to do that procedure later down the line if there was if speech or other like eating became an issue as well. And so having to do that procedure as an older kid, not the greatest.
No. I'm like, how would we have possibly done lip stretches?
Oh my God. With imagine if they had teeth.
No. We couldn't have done it.
No.
So, in both of my journeys with Liam and Blair with breastfeeding, successful in hospital first latch. That was great. I had at some point supplement with formula. Back when I didn't get him to latch and was super uncomfortable or wasn't as experienced. And then the other part being like, I am experienced and I know that if I don't take care of myself, this journey is going to end sooner than I want to. So supplement. So in both those situations at different times, I ended up supplemented with some type of formula, and I had amazing consultants to help me through that journey. And once again, a support system to help me through that journey with Brian. I put Brian through it. And so just being there and like him taking the notes while we're in the, he went to every single consultant appointment that I had and taking notes and was very attentive to make sure, like, once I got home, what do you want me to do? And just taking my lead on whether I wanted to give a bottle or I wanted to attempt, just being really patient in that aspect. And, just with my mom too, like in her support, being here when we were going to the consultant appointments and being here with, our other child. But also just like encouraging me too. She didn't breastfeed any of her kids, but like was very much invested in my journey to breastfeed. And she knew that it was something that I really wanted to do. So, I had that strong support system again with both of my journeys. And now being back at work, I talked about how important it was to make sure that your work environment is the same as well. And I'm still I ended up switching jobs when I left, when I was going back to work with Liam, but I went to this current job that I'm in right now. And that was where I did most of my pumping and stuff. So I have the same boss.
Oh, true. Yep.
And so she's like, super supportive of that journey. I think I like I was in the office the other day and I missed a pump session or something, and she's like, make sure you don't do that. She's like, I think someone jumped in the room that I was in. She's like, make sure you kick them out, blah, blah. She was like more upset about it than I was. And I was like, it's okay. And she's like, no, like you have to, this is important. You need to make sure that like put it on your calendar, make sure nothing moves it around. So, you know, I don't really think she even really understands how, and like we're friends, you know, but I still respect her a lot as a boss, and I don't think that people understand just saying those little things, like how much of it makes a difference, that you feel supported. It might seem obvious, but when you hear someone say it, you know, it definitely makes a difference. So I would say, even with all that being said, that experience I had in the beginning with Blair, I still feel like 99% of my journey has been pretty great because I really only suffered with those nipples, even though it seemed like forever.
It was only 2 days.
Stop. I would say it was fully
2 weeks?
healed. Yeah, not fully healed, but enough to be like, this is not like I'm one, you know.
So it was a half a week by the time you went to the consultant, but you're still healing. Yeah, maybe 2 weeks by the time you were like full healed.
Yep. So those 2 weeks were very long.
Yeah. Yep.
But in the grand scheme of things, when you have a goal of making it to 6 months to a year, it's those 2 weeks is just a boop in the whole journey that you're having. And so the last 3.5 months have been pretty great with Blair, and I feel like there's a lot of like that bonding around the whole experience, and to eliminate all that pain, it just makes your journey just that much better. So I think it's, you know, I definitely have a lot of, I think my journeys were very, very similar with both of them.
And so, you know, you talked about lactation consultants, but what other tools, you know, actually physical tools like a breast pump, and other resources that you found helpful for both kids now? Yeah.
So definitely, I think I talked about in my first episode, the breastfeeding pillow. Like that's big.
Yeah. My breast friend,
breastfeeding pillow. And it's so funny because my old boss was had a kid last April, and she was listening to this podcast, and she heard me recommend that, and she got it, and she's like, it made her breastfeeding journey. She's like, I went out and got that immediately.
Wow.
So I was like, as long as I touch just one person, I think I've said this before, but that's like so cool about this experience is that we're talking. We're like, who's really listening? And sometimes I ramble or say too much, but then some people get something out of the episode. And that's really all I'm here for. It's just like, here's my journey and here what could potentially help, because I didn't feel like there was a lot of resources out there to talk about these things. So I was all just piecing everything together from what I heard, from what I was researching.
And resources that talk about the nitty gritty of breastfeeding, or just, you know, like having a kid, because everyone's like, oh, you have your kid and you have your baby and you breastfeed and put them down and they have a schedule. And it's like, yeah, but then you kind of go a layer deeper and you're like, oh, these tired moms, these tired dads. But then you got to go a little bit, like 2 more layers deeper to like, what's the real? What's the real on all of this?
Yep. And, you know, I think a lot of social media.
Nipple in your mouth. Chunk of nipple in your mouth is like.
Yeah. Like, hello. No one really
Let's
told me.
Let's talk about those stories.
Yeah. No one really told me that was going to happen and that this was a possibility, and like these things you should be watching out for. So, you know, it was all me figuring it out. And I think when we looked at our insurance to see what can we do, or just having that nurse the first time with having Liam and being like, there's lactation consultants out there. Like, make sure you talk to, I no clue. I don't know why I just didn't think about it. I was like, oh, like I'll just figure it out. And that's it, right? I'll just Google what I need to. But no, there's like
the
actual
internet will tell you.
Yeah, the internet will tell you. But no, there's actual people that's their full-time job is to get the baby to latch correctly. So,
and they're excellent.
And they're excellent. But like that nurse just pumping information into me the first time when I first gave birth, then I had the tools I needed to go out and find the resources that I needed. So, yeah.
You talked about nipple shields. That silicone thing you used today, is that just like a catch-all?
Yes, and I forget what it's called. And
It's called a silicone breast pump.
That's what it's called.
I looked at it, yeah.
Okay, so
has no name.
I got that from
I guess a manual breast pump.
The nurse in the hospital gave it to me my second time with Blair this past recent time.
Yep.
And it's used to collect. She's like, when you're feeding the baby, there's letdown on the other breasts, even though you're not feeding them. She's like, you put this on there and the milk will drip down and you can collect it and give it to the baby, because it's true. It's like liquid gold where everyone talks about it. You don't want to waste any of it. Yeah. So, and you can get a good amount in there. And so I was talking about how I was feeling clogged or whatever. And so I got like a good portion.
Yeah, good 2 ounces.
Just a few minutes, a couple minutes of just massaging it. I got some, so I saved it. I was like, I don't have to squirt it into the sink or into a towel because it's wasteful and I can use it again. So
I just had a flashback to Vegas.
Yes. Oh my God. Anyways,
Celine Dion trip.
Yeah. And I was like, no, that actually takes me back to the play. Remember we watched
my God, The Cursed Child.
We went to go see the Harry Potter play, really long story short, and I didn't have a pump.
Liam was 4 months.
I didn't have a pump, and I'm like a super supplier. Like, I don't know why, but I've produced so much milk in the beginning, and it took a while for my supply to even regulate with Liam. And this was altogether, how many hours was I away from Liam?
Oh gosh, because that play was 5 hours, 6. So we were like 6 hours.
6 hours
6
away from
hours.
Away from him.
Yeah, traveling, intermission, dinner.
So we went to go grab in the first part of it. After the first part, we grabbed Chipotle. Yeah. And I'm like, Brian, I'm really full. So I had to go into the bathroom and just self-express into the sink because I was so full. Yeah. And
you like took a bunch of napkins with you.
Yeah. And then when I even got back to the theater, I did it some more. I had to like self-express into the sink because I didn't have a pump. So segue into pumps. So
perfect segue.
In the beginning, I knew I have to regulate with my supply. Wasn't fully breastfeeding. You were still giving bottles while I still was healing, and now we have a toddler running around like crazy. So I told the story in the beginning how traumatizing it was when Liam walked in on me pumping. Yeah. He's like, what is happening? And to this day, I will still remember his little face. Like, it's just burned into my memory of him watching me. So anyways, and even when I would have to pump, I'd be like, okay, see you guys in like 20 minutes. Yeah. Or back then in the very early days, it would take me like 10 minutes, but set up and everything else and then cleaning and everything. It was such a production. So I decided to invest in a pump that I can just put in my bra and still be able to get on the floor, play with Liam or play with Blair or just have a conversation. I'm not missing out so much time with you guys while you're out here and I'm in the room pumping by myself.
And top level, because I know I think you're going to do a whole write-up about this, but you got the Elvie.
It's like, you better do the write-up.
the Elvie, is that what it's called?
Yes, Elvie.
And top line, what are your thoughts on it? Like, is it everything, not that it promises, but is it everything you thought it would be? Helpful or convenient? And
like I said before, I do a lot of research before I buy things. So I did the research because there's a few options that you can get out there, and this outweighs a lot of the other ones. Like another big one was Willow one, and then there were some other brands I can't remember the name. With the Willow at the time, now they have another option, is that you had to buy another attachment instead of just using the bags. Like the one that it came with, you always had to use the disposable plastic bags to load those in there. And then another review was that you can't see. Like with the Willow, it's just a full cover. So to see if your milk is being let down, to make sure everything is lined up correctly and that it's expressing enough, or if it's full, you can't see the milk. You have to take the entire thing off to see it. So with the Elvie, it was like the milk, it came with the containers that the milk came in.
Reusable.
And
Or washable.
Yep. Washable. And you can peek in there and be like, okay, my milk is being let down. I'm good. It's fine that it's not because in breast pumps, it simulates and lets down. So it's what's normal even with breastfeeding with the baby. They'll have more frequent sucks, and then as the milk comes down, they'll start sucking a little less frequently because they're trying to stimulate the breast to get the milk to come down. And so that's what a pump is doing. And so all those, reading on the research, those were the two main reasons that I wanted to get the Elvie, was that it came with the pumps already, the reusable containers already, and I can see the milk. So, okay. So I I buy it, and luckily I saved up, I had the money in the FSA, so that wasn't really like a huge issue for me. But if not, it's a huge price tag for this one. So
because you want to get two.
Because you want to get two. Yep. So it's a good amount of money. So if you're looking to get one of them, you can get usually through your insurance. And if not, I knew what I wanted was a hospital grade pump. So that's what I got through my insurance for free. I got a new refreshed one. And then this portable one. Because a lot of the reviews was like, you want this because you're trying to be convenient, but like, let's say you're going back to work or you're pumping more frequently, or you can be stationary, you can use your other pump, right? Because this one only has but so much life in it. So I was like, okay, I want to get two. I want to get a new one that's stationary, and I want to get this one. Overall, I like it. I think that all the reviews that were online was fairly, like, it was correct on every little thing that it said about the pros and cons with it. My biggest con with it is, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's my service or what it is, or if I should just re-download it, the connection to my phone to tell me how much I'm pumping, so that I don't have to do the peek into my bra to see if it's being let down or how much is in there, is not always the most accurate. I always feel like it's off by 0.25 or half an ounce, anywhere between that, where it's telling me I'm doing a little more or less. It's not even like, oh, it's saying more than what is in or less. No, it's just like, it's just always off, either or. But overall, for what I need it for, it was great. And I was also afraid that it would take forever. Like, it's not a hospital grade one, so it's going to take forever. But lucky me, for whatever reason, my letdown is really quick, and my pump, so then it really took me, I probably get just as much pumping with my hospital grade one with this one, maybe give or take an ounce or two that I'll get more if I use my hospital grade one. But that's about it. And as long as I'm pumping enough that is for each feeding, I'm fine with that, right? Or I'll just skip and do another half session in there. But overall, the last couple times I've gone to work, I've taken those. So they're super portable, lightweight, like easy to clean. Overall, I like it. I did talk to someone, though, that had those, and she had a huge issue with like hacks to get it, because you want a really tight bra to really make sure it's pressed against there. And so also, if you have an issue where it's like it takes a lot of stimulation and stuff, like you want no gaps. You want to make sure that's pressed against your boob. And she was having so many issues that she used a one bra, and I think maybe put another bra or like a tight tank top to really make sure it was really pressed against her. And so I was like, okay, I can see that. So depending on maybe how your nipples are, or your boob size, or whatever else, or if you have it takes a lot to stimulate to get the milk out, this might be something that might not work as well as you would like it to. For me, it worked out for what I needed it to do.
Cool. And it's definitely saved you in some instances where either driving somewhere or want to be able to have that portable, convenient nature.
Yeah, quite a few. You're right. Like that's also the big thing.
That's like
once again, like it was because if I can't plug in production of multiple attachments, breaking it down, blah, and like all of this, I can't pump. Here I pumped quite a few times in the car, or just if there was like a place where like I think I had to do it in the bathroom one time. Not the best experience that I would want to do, but still was like a lot more seamless than if I had to like find an outlet and find somewhere to pump. And so that allowed me to be away, keep up my supply, and also just feel comfortable because I'm not leaking all over the place. So yeah, that was also one of the big reasons why I just in general, I needed a wireless pump, but Elvie kind of fit all the things that I needed it to do.
Got it. And you mentioned, transition back to work and also you're in a different scenario now where you're working from the office and working from home in this new world that we are in. So how has that been going? It's week 3, so
yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm going into week 3. Let's make that clear.
Yeah.
I think we made the decision that I'm going to pretend like I'm going to work every single day, even though I'm here sometimes, which I think makes it easier for me. Because before I was like, well, then maybe when I'm here, I'll just feed. But it's better, I think, just to put him on some type of schedule where he knows. And then so he's not boycotting that. I know mommy's here. She's just in the other room. So I wanted him to... I wanted Blair to be able to not give you any issue with giving him the bottle. So I kind of just pretend I'm not here. I'll still sneak out and just like see him, and he'll sometimes want to nurse. I'm like, no, because I see that full bottle that you're giving daddy a hard time with. And then I'll realize either he'll get me back either late at night because he wants to nurse more frequently late at night or longer usually. But he's been like really, really good. I've been very surprised. I think there's been a couple of days where he's just like boycotted you for a little bit, or just gave you a really hard time.
He's and the king of like not spitting out, but not swallowing anything. Like when we had to give him Tylenol one time because vaccines were just kicking him in his butt, and he's like, "No, I don't like this taste," and just pushed it out with his tongue. That little tongue now just likes to be sticking out. And with milk, he'll like want to drink from the bottle, but then like spits it out as if, wait, this is a bottle. This is not like, mommy's this is not what breast. I want.
It's like, this is weird.
But it's the same thing. Yeah, like what you're getting.
And I thought
it's also aged slightly.
Whatever. Funny.
Which should be better.
But I thought it was going to be a lot easy. It is a lot easier, but I didn't think he was going to give you as much issues because throughout the maternity leave, we gave him one.
Yeah. We gave him a bottle every
once a day. I just think that he's like, okay, this is like getting old. I had the first bottle. Where's mommy?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, where is she? But thankfully we kept with that because I think he would have been even more stubborn than Liam with the bottles.
Yeah.
If we didn't do what we did.
I agree. Because I think that was part of our conscious decision to start bottles early. I mean, it was like we were sort of forced into it with his tongue tie, but I think we also were planning to do bottles earlier than what we did with Liam.
Yeah, because it was such a struggle to figure out which bottle he would take, which, if this helps anyone, the Como Tomo bottle, as far as moving from, if you still want to breastfeed but also give bottles, because babies get a nipple preference sometimes with the flow
preference.
A flow preference. Yeah, they actually said don't say nipple preference. It's actually a flow preference because, typically the milk from the breast comes out a lot slower than a typical bottle. And with the Como Tomo, they have the slow flow, which would mimic how your milk will come out. Not necessarily because my one boob spurts like comes out really quickly.
Yeah.
Hence why he has a preference to it, and
Yep.
why that's
Yep.
the boob that makes the most milk. Even when I'm pumping, I notice that it makes the most milk because that's the one he goes to because he likes a faster flow. So we actually went to the 2-flow bottle
Yes.
now.
Yeah.
And he loves it. I think he's taking it a little bit better. But that was also another thing that we found during our first journey, that this was the best bottle that worked. And it worked again the second time. Because I just think things are, every baby, yes, is different. Every journal, yes, is different. But some of the like core things of what they're looking for, such as like flows and stuff like that, stays pretty consistent. So we kept those bottles, bought some new nipples, called it a day, and it's worked for us since. I don't think we're going to go back to any other bottles. We actually was cleaning out the cabinet and was like, can we get rid of this one?
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, I don't think we're going to be using it.
Yeah.
So
Pretty good with it. But yeah, all in all, I guess your transition is, although slightly different, it's been an easy transition back to work.
Yes, it has been an easy transition back to work. I will do better with keeping my schedule with pumping and not letting it be moved around like the way I've been doing the last couple weeks. So to like help with that, I put like the time slots in my calendar. So like it's a meeting for me so people can work around my pump schedule.
And do you think it's one of the last things we wanted to talk about is, do you think it's important for you as a Black woman to talk about breastfeeding, and why?
Yeah, I think it is important. I was like, doing research around this the first time around with breastfeeding. And I think I also forget my research. Just kind of, you think about, if you're a Black woman listening to this podcast, go back and you're around my age, so you're a millennial, right? And our moms, our aunts, our grandmothers, that wasn't something that I saw with breastfeeding. I didn't see that. Most of them were formula fed. And so I didn't really have, which once again is nothing wrong with that, but I didn't have an example of how my journey would look. Until I think I started to have like people that were younger than me or my same age outside my family that was doing the journey. And I was like, I guess this is something I can try. And that was kind of what made me start thinking about breastfeeding in the first place, right? Was seeing just those, because if I was to imagine how my journey would be when I was a kid, and I think about my dolls and the bottles I had with my dolls, like, it was formula. Without even a thought about it, it was kind of instilled with me that was how my journey was going to look. And so when I discovered there was another option, I started to look into it a little bit more. And there's just like a lot of, there's a lot of statistics out there that, Black women are less likely to breastfeed. Just looking at the numbers with, initially breastfeeding, I think it was like 60 or 70% of Black women breastfeed. It might actually be lower, don't even quote me, versus like, I think it was like an mid to high 80s of white women who breastfeed. And then breaking it down further, when looking at how many of them went past like the 6+ range, it was like, 44% of Black women were like successful, or like 40 something percent were successful to go past the 6 months, versus your 50 something, close to 60% of white women who were able to go past the 6 months. So just breaking down some statistics, like white cis women were the ones who were more successful with breastfeeding, and then breastfeeding for a longer period of time. And there's a lot of different factors that go into that, based off of, a lot of Black women are the breadwinners in households. So when you think about the time commitment that breastfeeding has, like, you gotta get back to work, or the job that you have, you don't want to jeopardize being like, I need accommodations to breastfeed. So that cut that journey for a lot of Black women, or the type of jobs that a lot of Black women might have just don't have the benefits of lactation rooms and required jobs are not giving the required breaks that they need. And so all those things are stacked against them economically in order to make that decision to breastfeed. And then if you go deep, deep, deep into like the trauma around breastfeeding, you know, the whole term of wet nursing came back when, you know, slave owners, you know, they would line up their pregnancies and births with a slave or an enslaved. People have really corrected that, right? You don't want to call them slaves. You called them enslaved people who, you know, women, they would line up their pregnancies with them so that if they weren't able to breastfeed, or if they just simply didn't want to breastfeed, they can have, you know, the enslaved, you know, woman come in to breastfeed their baby. And so,
and that would mean her baby would not be
exactly
fed.
So a lot of Black babies were malnutrition, malnourished, or they would die because they would be fed some dried milk with dirty water. You know, because you have to be, especially in those early days, things have to be very sanitized when you're feeding the baby. And so they would die. And so, you know, the slave owners didn't want that to happen to their babies. So they didn't care where the milk came from. So we were used as these cows essentially to feed their children up until the ages of like 2 years old. And let me tell you like what breastfeeding does to your body. You know, you have to really nourish it really well because it just depletes everything, like your energy, everything. It's going to, it just sucks the life out of you. And so if you're breastfeeding not even your child, and for a commitment of 2 years, I did it for a year and I was like, okay, I'm done. This is my own child that I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. And here they were forced to be wet nurses. And that's where this term came from, right? To do this for white people's babies. And so there's a lot of trauma. I think it wasn't really, it's not like a thought, like we go really back into your great grandmothers, why they decided not to do this, especially when other options for safer formula came about, is because you have this trauma of breastfeeding, this historical trauma of breastfeeding white babies and having your children die and be malnourished. So, you know, I reading some of those stories, I was like, wow. And just hearing that term, like, oh, that's where wet nurse came from. Like, that's crazy. Now it's like, what is it? People who just come at night just to feed the baby.
Night nurse.
A night nurse. But I think they call it wet. Well, I think sometimes there is actual, like, even wet nurses, right?
Oh, I don't know.
I don't know if actually people actually do that.
There might be. Now because there's a formula shortage, but now you're seeing women across the country who are oversupplying put out on social media like, hey, I have like 6 months of frozen milk.
Maybe I was thinking of the term not so much wet nurse, but like you said, night nurse. But like I think that's kind of like what's similar. But of course, with the night nurse, they're only coming there during the night to allow people to sleep and whatnot, so that they can feed the bottles and stuff. So,
but essentially, these lower breastfeeding rates among Black women is due to interference with a Black mother's ability to breastfeed being historic and systemic.
Yeah, I mean, that's what a lot of, you know, and I'm not a historian by no means, but that's a lot of those articles and stuff that I was reading, that they were like, there's some linkage right there. Like, trauma doesn't just kind of stop with the person that was traumatized. It goes on for many generations. And they're like, you know, if there's some reason why, if you really look back, you know, sometimes your decisions that you make are not just because what's your personal decision that's what I want to do, but because everything swayed you into making those decisions. So whether, like I mentioned before, the media and everything else, and your family not breastfeeding, you thought, oh, this was a choice that I made, but really it was not really a choice because you didn't see it as an option in the first place. And so those little things that happens that that's why we are where we are, where there's just such a low percentage or a lower percentage of Black women who breastfeed or at least breastfeed for a long period of time. But I think those things are changing because a lot of people are talking about it.
The co-founder of Black Breastfeeding Week, which is every August, which I know you've participated in lending your voice to, just on social and on our own platforms. But one of the co-founders said that we must end the dangerous conversation of breastfeeding as a choice without a deeper discussion as to how Black women's choices are shaped by their circumstances.
Exactly. And I think that's so important, and why there's a Black Breastfeeding Week specifically, because, I had a lot of friends that I fully support who wrote on social media with the formula shortage that this was their decision. They decided not to breastfeed, and that's okay, because people were shaming people well, why don't you just breastfeed, because if there's no formula, and they're like,
sure,
what?
Let me just get my
my
breast back up.
And I fully support it. Became very angry for them as well when people were saying that stuff on social media. But this conversation is a little bit different, right? It's first we need to let Black women know that this is an option and give them all the tools so that they can then say, I don't want to do it. This is not for me. I don't want to do it, instead of being straight to formula without even a thought to there's another option that you can do. So the campaign and the discussion is not around shaming women for not deciding to do it, but just to equip women with the knowledge and the skills to be able to make that, to finally have a choice, because the choice was taken from us before. And so now they're trying to give that back to women, Black women.
And now, on your second journey and still going, 8 more months to go. No, whatever. Whenever you want to say you're done. But what are your kind of final thoughts on just breastfeeding in general? For newbies, for returners, for everyone.
I think that, when they say
things to remember.
Yeah, I think the big thing is that people say every pregnancy, every child and journey is different. And being my second time around, it's one of those things it seems so obvious. Of course, everybody's different, but sometimes you get so overly confident, or you're just I can I've done this before. But then the uniqueness of pregnancy, birth, and children that come out of you, just the uniqueness of all of them changes that journey so much for you. And so to be able to pivot and take some of the things you learned in your first journey, but be reminding yourself throughout the entire time, every journey is different. You can still get to the same destination, right? It just might look a little different each time. And so I got to the same destination with both Blair and Liam, with wanting to breastfeed them and creating that bond. But my journey was different with each of them. One was just, really sleepy baby who didn't, and efficient and nursed really quickly. The other one had medical issue, medical things that prevented them to be able to do that. And so I had to pivot and figure out what to do to ultimately get to the destination that I wanted to get to, which was breastfeeding them and keeping my eye on the prize. And I would once again say the support system was really what really made my journey the way it made it a success, was to be able to have some people around me that encouraged me to not give up, because I wanted to give up.
But also it's okay if you wanted to give up.
Yes, but I wanted to give up because I thought that I couldn't see past
I know
my current circumstances. I just was I'm in pain, and
that's
all I
say
kept.
Your choice to give up, your choice to stop.
Out of frustration.
It's not giving up.
And people who know me, I just felt defeated. But they saw that my want and to actually breastfeed outweighed that, and so they're had the tongue tie procedure, the consultation and stuff not worked, then I can say you did everything and then step away. And I think that's what my support system wanted to make sure you do everything first, that you feel comfortable with doing, and then walk away, because then you can look back and be like, I did everything, this was just so damn hard, or like it just didn't work out for us, because even with the procedure, maybe he would have taken the bottle better and then still didn't really want to latch very correctly. So it just worked out for me that it corrected everything that I needed it to correct.
Yeah.
So I just want to stress once again, like, every journey is going to be different. So if you feel like, okay, you're listening to this and like, oh, I don't think I could do that. My nipple's bleeding. You might have a baby who's just amazing and just like, I shouldn't say amazing, but just, able to quickly latch and be fine. Don't need a consultation, need nothing, and just go on your merry way. Or you may have a similar experience that I had, and you're like, okay, I remember Fatima said, insurance companies for the most part should be covering X amount of lactation consultants, or I can go on a website and find someone to help and do it in your early days and stuff like that, or ask for that lactation consultant in the first days. Or it's okay to supplement. That doesn't mean that you can continue your journey. You can hear all the things that I said and be like, that's fine, and you might not hit on every single point. And that's okay. And so I think that's important, just to remember that, like, every journey is different. And so, maybe everything's not lined up the way you see how my story was lined up, and maybe something might be helpful for you to take on your own personal journey.
I really love that. I think it's a great way to end this episode.
Yeah.
And then I have one episode, unless we want to make it two more, but we got one more final thoughts on everything coming up, and that'll end this season 2 journey. Maybe we'll come back at some point.
Yeah, okay, maybe
Bonus episode
to talk about raising teenagers.
Yeah. Oh my god. if these platforms are still around in, I guess, it's 10 years. Oh my god. So wild. Anyways,
we're a 14-year-old.
We'll live in the now. He's 4 years old and 4-month-old, so we'll live in the now.
Yep. Good idea.
Thanks for listening.
That's all for this episode, but make sure you're following the show so you know when the next episode is out.
Check out our website, liliesandloafers.com, for cooking and DIY inspiration and more updates from our growing family.
Millennial and Pregnant is a Lilies and Loafers original podcast. It's hosted by me, Fatima.
And me, Brian. Original music by Purple Planet. Thanks for listening. We'll see you soon.